She had a lot of things.
Good morning. What a joy it is to welcome all of you to worship this morning, and a special word of greeting to those of you who are guests today. We're especially glad that you're here, and we'll look forward to sharing in this time of worship together. I invite you to register your attendance on those connection cards that are included in your order of service, and we will collect those during the offering time. Number of announcements we'd like to lift up. First of all, Greg, would you speak with us?
In your order of worship this morning is a white sheet, hopefully. And it has a number of announcements of upcoming fall educational opportunities. That first will resume on September the 5th. And that night we will do the last in our book series on diversity, cultivating community in diverse America, who is my neighbor. So if you haven't already, grab one of the theses that we'll be reading for this last one, Through Their Eyes, Experiences of Mexican Immigrants in Green Bay, and then join us on the 5th for Vespers and then for the discussion afterwards. Then if you turn it over, we'll start the fall educational series Tuesday the 12th, looking at Wesley's 3 simple rules, and we'll take each one of those rules in a week's time each week and through October 3rd. Then this I'm kind of really excited about. We're starting a new book study, and there'll be 2 sessions, a morning session and an evening session. Greg Doucette and I will do a 6-week book study, and we'll start with the book Everything Belongs by Father Richard Rohr. We'll meet, you'll read it, discuss the book, and then we'll get together and chat about it. That begins on the 14th of September.
Thank you. So that our regular Tuesday evening classes will be the Wesley study, but the book study he just mentioned is now Thursday offering, both in the morning and in the evening. So we look forward to that. We've been talking about the art festival that's coming up. That's a component of our stewardship campaign So the art festival will be the first weekend of October. If you are an artist in any medium, we invite you to please take part in this event. It will be a wonderful sharing for our congregation, and there is registration information on the patio today. It's with very great sadness that we share with you the news that of a longtime member, dear friend of ours, Shelley Rivers, passed yesterday. This was a sudden tragedy, and our deep prayers and sympathies are with Jim Rivers and their entire family this day. As plans are being made for a celebration of her life, those plans will be conveyed to the congregation at a later time, but in the meantime, we hold that whole family in deepest prayer at this time. Let's stand and greet one another. Our opening hymn is My Hope is Built, number 368. Let us stand and sing.
Stretches to the sky.
Your righteousness is like mighty mountains. Your justice flows like the ocean's tide.
We lift our voices to worship you, our God and King.
We will find our strength in the shadow of your wings.
Because God is the ground of our believing, the hope of our living, and the joy of our loving. Let us seek his mercy as we confess our needs before God and each each other. Merciful God, for the things we have done against your will, for that of your will which we have failed to do, have mercy upon us. For the times we have acted without love, for the times we have reacted without thought, have mercy upon us. For the times we have withdrawn care, for the times we have withheld forgiveness, have mercy upon us. For hurt words spoken, for helpful words unspoken, for unfinished tasks and unfulfilled hopes, have mercy upon us, and grant us your peace, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Lift up your spirits with thanksgiving to God, whose nature is always to have mercy. All who seek forgiveness shall never need to look back and regret. In the name of Jesus Christ, you are forgiven. In the name of Jesus Christ, you are forgiven. Thanks be to God. Amen.
A reading from the book of Romans. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to the God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of yourself more highly than you ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. For as in one body we have many members, and not all members have the same function. So we, who are many, are one body in Christ, and individually we are members one of another. We have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us. Prophecy in proportion to faith, ministry in ministering, the teacher in teaching, the exhorter in exhortation, the giver in generosity, the leader in diligence, the compassionate in cheerfulness.
How can I
Gospel lesson from the 16th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew. Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he sternly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. Let us stand and sing "As a Fire Was Meant for Burning," number 2237. You'll find that in the Faith We Sing hymn. Let us pray together. Lord, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. O Lord, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. Some years ago, I had an office with a 20-gallon aquarium on a credenza in front of the desk. I inherited it from a Navy family in the church who were deployed to Japan. I spent a lot of time in that appointment watching those fish. The aquarium also boosted my popularity with the children in the church, especially those in the preschool, because on rainy days when it was too wet to play outside, one of the teachers in particular would relieve their cabin fever by bringing the kids over to look at the minister and the fish. One day, the children had spent the morning making stick horses out of yardsticks and paper. The teacher also pulled out the cowboy hats, so they were in full rodeo costume when they rode their horses over to the church office. And as they galloped down the hall, I could hear the teacher shushing them and asking them to use their inside voices. The teacher intended for them to visit the associate minister, whom they knew because she was the one who led their weekly chapel services. And so after they left her office, the teacher headed back towards the front door, but the child who was in the front of the line turned left instead of right and ended up in my office. And then, like sheep, the whole class followed that leader, and they paid me a visit. And so the children circled their horses around my desk, and the teacher came in and told them that I was a minister, just like the woman that they had visited earlier. And so after I got the names of all their horses and they checked out my fish, the teacher then corralled them into two lines and proceeded to lead them out of the office. But one little blonde-haired boy at the end of the line was taking his time as he looked at the bookcases and then handled most of the stuff that was on my desk. But then, without inhibition, he came right up to the side of my chair, looked me in the eye, and he said, "When will you come to the stage and tell us about God?" I thought that kid was just there to see the fish. I don't remember what I had planned to do that day, but I was taken aback. How could such a simple question stir up so much in me? And what threw me was not only the innocence of that surprising question, but also the weight of what my answer should be. That boy's question was imprinted on me that day because it defines so clearly the responsibility that followers of Jesus have to speak words of truth and hope to other people, even those who have no qualms about riding stick horses or speaking honestly to strangers. That encounter was what my Southern friends in seminary would have called my come to Jesus moment. Well, our passage for today is the story of Peter's real come to Jesus moment. Jesus asked Peter pretty much the same question that blonde cowboy asked me. For who do you say that I am is not that different than asking, when are you going to come to the stage and talk to us about God? Well, in this week's lesson, Jesus asked his disciples to tell him the truth. He asked, who do people say that I am? It's an identity question. And this question asked in chapter 16 sets us up for the divine identification that's given a couple of chapters later, when Jesus is transfigured on the mountain and God declares from the heavens exactly who he is, saying, "This is my beloved Son, listen to him." So this talk that Jesus has with his 12 disciples is indeed a pivotal moment in Jesus' earthly ministry because it foreshadows the transfiguration. But where we are in the story this morning, that divine intervention has yet to be. And what we have before us today is Jesus trying to gauge the efficacy of his ministry. And so he takes a poll of sorts. He says, who do people say that the Son of Man is? And he wants his disciples to do some critical thinking about the serious work that they are called to do. They are not just here to make people feel good about themselves. As followers of Jesus, their job is to transform lives. And so Jesus wants to know from the disciples, is that happening? Do the people recognize that he is the Messiah, the Son of Man, the Savior that has been promised? And so the disciples report, well, they're saying a lot of things. Some say that you're John the Baptist, come back from the dead. And that one doesn't really make any sense because earlier in this gospel, Matthew demonstrated that Jesus is not John the Baptist because they were both present at the same time at his baptism. Another disciple reports, some say that because of your prophetic preaching, you might be Elijah. And people might think this because they know that in the Hebrew scriptures, the prophet Elijah never died. He just departed to heaven in a chariot. So, maybe he's back. Another disciple said, well, with all the rabble-rousing you're doing, some have suggested that you are a second Jeremiah. In other words, the word around town is that Jesus is some sort of sequel to what they have experienced in the past. Now, in contemporary jargon, we might say that these people are not able to think outside the box. They are having trouble imagining God doing a new thing in Jesus. So hearing this, Jesus is quiet for a minute. And then he asks a more specific question of his small circle of disciples. He says, well, it's clear that the crowds aren't getting in. But what about you? Who do you say that I am? And what happens then is like what happens in most Methodist churches when somebody asks for a volunteer to pray. All the disciples' eyes look downward so that they do not have to meet the eyes of their Savior. But leave it to Peter to break the awkward silence by raising his hands and declaring, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Well, now coming from Peter, the one disciple who is ever eager to please, it makes you wonder if he is just talking without thinking or if he indeed has some conviction behind his words. We've reason to be suspicious. Even just 2 weeks ago, we heard about Peter's short walk on the water and his rescue by Jesus. Perhaps that little dip in the drink was actually a baptism that washed away his doubts and his impulsiveness. Maybe Peter has indeed figured out who Jesus is. Not according to the passage. Jesus makes it pretty clear that this affirmation of Peter's has come to him as a gift from God. Jesus acknowledges as much when he says that flesh and blood have not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And the fact that Peter goes on to mess up so badly that Jesus likens him to Satan just a short time later, I think is further proof that Peter is not on his own here. That story is an episode for another sermon. For now, I want us to stay in this moment, though, when Peter makes his confession of faith, because it really is a very precious moment that occurs between Jesus and Peter. Jesus blesses Peter, and he does this in a most touching way. He gives him a nickname that is going to set the course for the rest of his life. So after Peter makes his affirmation that Jesus is indeed the Messiah, Jesus gives him a new name. He says, "Now you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." And Jesus has a play on words going on here. He names Simon Peter Petros, Peter, which actually means little stone. And he says it more like it's an endearment, like saying, "You're my little stone." It's not romantic, but it's touching. And then in the same sentence, Jesus calls the church Petra, or rock. So we have now a little stone and a rock. And the connection that Jesus is making is that Peter is going to be an integral part of the establishment of the church following the resurrection. And so in spite of all of his frail humanity, Peter is blessed and given a major role in the building up of God's heaven on earth, the church. This is the new thing that God was doing in Jesus. Jesus established the church in order to offer real love and connection with God and other people. And all of these biblical stories about the clumsy, vulnerable, wounded disciples remind us of the human face of the church. The church has always been a gathering, and later an institution, made up of people who live in the tension between faith and doubt, between sin and forgiveness, between fear and courage, between selfishness and hope. That's one of the things that makes the church different from other institutions or even society as a whole. The church is built up by people of faith, but it is established and empowered and sustained by God. So for those of us who today make up the church, maybe a question is, if Peter is so much like us, so human. And his story is one of blessing. Is his calling also part of our story? Does Jesus not ask us the same big question? Who do you say that I am? And our answer, as articulate or as bumbling as it may be, becomes another rock in the foundation on which the church continues to be built. Now, after Jesus blesses Peter, he gives him a symbolic gift, which I think speaks volumes about Jesus' intentions for Peter. It says he promises him the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Now, this metaphor of a key can be thought of in two ways. You could think about keys as a means of keeping people out. Or you could just as easily see a key as a way to let people in. I think that Jesus promised Peter, the leader of the church, the keys to the kingdom for the latter reason. Jesus was a door opener, not a door closer. And the keys to the kingdom are used to let those who are on the outside come in. For if the one with the church key doesn't open the door, then what use is the church? I want to tell you a story about 3 church keys. Now, when the United Methodist Church gets a new minister, the process involves an introductory meeting between the Staff Parish Relations Committee and the new minister. Truth be told, it's not really an interview. It's more like a blind date that results in an arranged marriage. And the way the meeting usually happens is that the designated minister enters an unfamiliar room that's filled with nervous and expectant church members who themselves have no idea who's going to walk in the door. Well, I have been through this a number of times. And on one particular occasion, Myron and I and our 2 boys had driven many hours to a town that we had never heard of, and even had to locate it on a map when we got the call from the district superintendent that we were going to move there. And to add to the tension, we had a brand new baby who didn't take real well to being away from me. So when we were invited into that meeting, all 3 of us entered the room. All in all, the meeting ended up being a really honest sharing of hopes and concerns, laced with good humor. Our conversation lasted as long as the baby slept. But at the conclusion of that meeting, the chair of the committee came over, and he reached in his pocket and he pulled out 2 keys, 1 for each of us. And he told us that this was our place now. And so here was our key. It was a very powerful gesture of hospitality and encouragement and commitment. At another appointment, our family arrived at the church office late in the day after having driven 8 hours in heavy traffic. We were told that we were to pick up the keys in the church office both for the church and for the parsonage that we were supposed to live in. So, and we needed to do that, we were told, before the close of business on a particular day. So we arrived, but none of the keys were there. We were told that the parsonage key was with the volunteers who were still over there painting the interior, and the church key would be given to us after we filled out a key request form and put down a $5 deposit. As it turned out, another church I worked at gave every new member a key to the chapel. Doing that was not without a few risks, but the symbolism was wonderful. For when you join a church, you promise to give your whole self, your prayers, presence, your gifts, your service, and your witness. You are invited to bring every bit of yourself into this relationship with Jesus through the church. The church becomes your place now. You belong here. And every one of us has a contribution to make toward building the full realization of the kingdom. That was why at that church, everybody was given a key. It really matters what a church does with its keys.
Let us now stand together and affirm our faith. I believe in the living God of love, the spirit of love and compassion, founded the breadth and depth of every human life. I believe in the vision of Jesus, the reigning of God on earth, founder of people and societies governed by the rule of love. I believe in the way of Jesus, a love for God and neighbor, a love for stranger and enemy, a love for outcast and alien. I believe in the abundant life of Jesus, a life of acceptance, inclusion, and forgiveness, a life of equality, generosity, and sharing, a life of compassion, service, and nonviolence. In the name of Jesus, and in the name of love, I commit myself to care for others, to break down the barriers that separate us, and to seek justice and peace in the world. Amen. Thank you. Please be seated. As we continue now in this time of prayer, let us sing together our call to prayer. And as we sing, know that you're invited to light a candle, if you'd like, as a symbol of your prayer. Gracious and loving God, we come giving thanks for your presence in our lives this morning. Your love is like a basket of ripe summer fruit. We give thanks for the gift of seasons, for the sun and the warmth of summer, for the green and blue of the mighty oceans. We pray that we might be a rock for Christ to count on, with the gifts and talents that we have been given, that we might be strong in the face of adversity and brave when danger is present, compassionate when sorrow and strife prevail. Be with all of those today who are struggling with life situations, be it with physical health, or mental health, or issues of the heart. God, be in the midst of those around the world that hunger for food or for a safe place to lay their heads. For all areas of unrest around the country and around the world, we grieve and we pray for peace and your mercy. Be with the leadership of all countries, that as decisions are made, peace might prevail throughout. God, we pray today for Jim Rivers at the passing of his wife, Shelley. Be with Jim and all of the family and friends grieving her loss today. We pray for Joanne Truesdale, who took a fall this last week. Be in her recovery and healing. Creator God, we pray for those affected by the hurricane this weekend. Be with those dealing with the fear and turmoil of the storm and its aftermath. Be with those responding to these emergencies. Keep them safe and their work productive and effective. And we pray for Laura Kitson receiving this prayer quilt today. May the prayers that we offer as we tie knots in this quilt bring healing of body, mind, and spirit. And for other names whose rest on our hearts, be they out of joy or with concern, congregation, I invite you to lift these names loud now. God, in your grace, hear our prayers. God of all creation, continue to transform our hearts in the days to come, that we might love generously. Transform our eyes that we might see your grace. Transform our hands that we might be in service of others. Forever give us the courage to answer your call, and grant us the endurance to use our gifts that we might do your will always. Be with us as we offer these prayers, this prayer that Christ taught to us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. As we celebrate the gifts that we have received, let us now give of ourselves. Will the ushers please come forward to collect our gifts and tithes? living God, with good pleasure you give us gifts beyond our imagining. We offer these gifts in our lives in response and pray that they may be pleasing to you. May our hearts be shaped by the concerns of your heart, and our lives be ever ready to do your will. Amen. As we join together in our closing hymn, Pat and Marla will sing the first verse. It's a new hymn. Following the benediction, I invite you to be seated for the postlude. I heard it before the service. It's wonderful. All right. May the Lord bless you and keep you. Go with you this day and always in peace.